I need to talk about this because every day something new comes out about Blake Lively, and every day it gets worse. Taylor Swift is over here picking wedding venues and signing NDAs, while Blake is desperately trying to drag her into a courtroom for the May 18th, 2026 trial date. And then there's Ben Affleck, who apparently took one look at Blake's messages and said absolutely not. The reason he ghosted her connects back to some seriously messy history from It Ends With Us, and we need to get into all of it. So Blake Lively is out here texting everyone she's ever worked with, trying to rally support for her $500 million legal battle with Justin Baldoni, and two of the biggest names in Hollywood basically left her on red. Taylor Swift, her supposed best friend, is reportedly not concerned with any of it and says it doesn't involve her. And Ben Affleck, a man who once couldn't stop gushing about Blake in interviews, completely ignored her outreach. Now I have thoughts on both of these. Because when you start pulling at the threads here, the story that unravels involves high-powered attorney Sigrid McCauley, the California Civil Rights Department complaint, and way messier history than what's on the surface. Let's start with Taylor, because this one is fascinating to me. Page 6 is reporting that Taylor Swift, who is currently deep in wedding planning mode with Travis Kelce, is basically living her best life right now. She's not stressed about the trial, she's not worried about being called as a witness, and she's apparently told people close to her that this legal fight between Blake and Baldoni simply does not involve her. And I get it, I really do. But let's be honest for a second. Blake literally bragged about Taylor being one of her dragons. Those text messages showed how Blake was name-dropping Taylor as some kind of weapon to intimidate people, and even used Taylor's song My Tears Ricochet in the film as leverage. Now, Taylor is supposed to just pretend none of that happened? Here's what I think is really going on. Taylor Swift is one of the most strategic people in entertainment. She doesn't do anything without thinking 10 steps ahead. So when she says this doesn't involve her, what she's really saying is, I am not letting Blake's mess become my mess. And can you blame her? Taylor has spent years carefully building her reputation back up after all the drama she went through earlier in her career. The last thing she needs is to get dragged into a courtroom over something she had no part in. But that doesn't mean she's not feeling some type of way about it behind closed doors, because those text messages where Blake was essentially using Taylor's name as leverage had to sting. And while all of this is happening, Taylor is full steam ahead on what sounds like the most over-the-top celebrity wedding we've ever seen. We're talking A-list guest lists, military-level security, NDAs for everyone in attendance, and phones being monitored at the door. The date is set, the planning is locked in, and nothing about the Blake situation is slowing any of it down. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this part honestly blew my mind a little bit when I started connecting the dots. There's a theory floating around that Taylor actually rushed her last album, Life as a Showgirl, out ahead of schedule because she knew all this legal stuff with Blake was about to drop. And honestly, the timeline kind of supports it. Think about it. She did that quick media push, showed up on Travis Kelce's podcast, released the album, and then basically disappeared. Most Taylor Swift albums have this long promotional cycle where she's everywhere for months doing interviews, dropping music videos, teasing Easter eggs for the fans. This one didn't get that treatment at all. It came out, it did well because it's Taylor Swift, and then it was done. Almost like she wanted to clear the deck before the storm hit. Now, I'm not saying that's definitely what happened. But if you're Taylor Swift and you know your so-called best friend is about to become the most controversial woman in Hollywood, you'd probably want your professional stuff wrapped up before your name starts getting pulled into depositions. That's just smart planning, and nobody plans better than Taylor Swift. The real question everyone keeps asking is whether she'll address any of this in her next album. Because we all know Taylor processes her life through music. Every breakup, every feud, every betrayal ends up in a song eventually. So what happens when the friend who was supposed to be in your squad forever turns out to be someone who was using your name to bully people behind the scenes? Now let's pivot to the other person who left Blake hanging, because this story is even juicier. Ben Affleck apparently wanted nothing to do with Blake's outreach, and when you hear the full history between these two, it makes complete sense. Back in 2010, Blake Lively auditioned for Ben Affleck's 2010 crime thriller, The Town. At the time, she was mostly known for Gossip Girl, and nobody had really flagged her as someone to watch. Ben has talked about this in old interviews, saying she walked in and he assumed she'd just be some blonde girl, but then she absolutely nailed the Boston accent and blew everyone away. He was genuinely impressed, and he did not hold back about it in the press. He compared discovering her to buying stock before it skyrockets. He said things like, "She's really going to blow up, and I want to look like the smart guy who saw it coming." During filming, he reportedly took her sightseeing around Boston, showed her the neighborhood he grew up in, and they had dinner together after shooting some of their more intimate scenes. At the time, Ben was married to Jennifer Garner, and Blake was dating her Gossip Girl co-star Penn Badgley. So you've got two people in relationships spending a whole lot of quality time together on set, and the gossip magazines absolutely ate it up. The chemistry rumors between Ben and Blake were all over the tabloids, and reportedly, Jennifer Garner was not thrilled about any of it. Sources at the time said Jen trusted Ben, but there was always a part of her that worried he'd slip back into his old ways, especially when he was working closely with a younger co-star he couldn't stop complimenting. And then, in 2011, things took a really ugly turn. Blake Lively's phone got hacked, and private photos of her were leaked online. Now, this was during that awful period when a bunch of celebrities were getting their phones broken into, and it was genuinely terrible and illegal, regardless of who the victim was. Initially, Blake's team came out swinging and said the photos were completely fake and that she'd never taken pictures like that. But then the hackers released 17 more images with details that made it pretty hard to deny, things like matching tattoos and the same phone model Blake was known to use. This was before AI-generated images were a thing, so you couldn't just wave it away as a deep fake. The situation got even more awkward when Reese Witherspoon, while accepting an MTV Movie Award with Blake in the audience, made comments about women who take risque photos of themselves. Reese's team insisted she wasn't talking about Blake specifically, but the timing was impossible to ignore. Here's where it gets really emotional, though. Fast forward to 2023, and Jennifer Garner is having a public conversation with Reese Witherspoon where she references going through a very public, very hard moment in her life and says that Reese was right there for her during that time. Fans immediately connected the dots back to the Blake and Ben rumors from the Town era, and honestly, it's hard not to see the connection. Whether anything actually happened between Ben and Blake romantically is something only they know for sure, but what's clear is that the whole situation caused real pain for Jennifer Garner, and the ripple effects lasted for years. So when Blake reportedly reached out to Ben during this current legal drama, essentially trying to pull him into her corner for the May 2026 trial, he apparently looked at the situation and made a very deliberate choice to stay far away. According to insiders, the last thing he wanted was to open a dialogue with Blake that could somehow become public and dredge up all those old rumors again. He and Jennifer have spent years rebuilding their relationship into what people describe as a genuinely supportive co-parenting partnership, and Ben wasn't about to jeopardize that for someone else's legal problems. And that decision from Ben honestly tells you so much about where things stand. This is a man who, 15 years ago, was comparing Blake Lively to a hot stock pic and telling anyone who would listen that he discovered her. He was genuinely proud of her work and excited about her career. For that same person to now, look at her name on his phone and choose silence. Something clearly changed. If their relationship had always been purely professional and wholesome, there wouldn't be this level of avoidance. You don't ghost someone you mentored unless there's baggage attached. And it really does feel like there's a lot of baggage here. What makes this even more telling is the pattern we're seeing with Blake right now. She texted everyone, she reached out to Ben, she leaned on Taylor's name in those messages with Justin Baldoni's team, she pulled Ryan Reynolds into meetings about a movie that wasn't even his project. The picture that keeps forming is someone who sees other people's fame and influence as tools she can use whenever she needs them, and one by one, those people are stepping back. Taylor is distancing herself, Ben won't engage. Even the public reaction has shifted dramatically from where it was when this all first broke. Remember when the initial allegations came out against Justin, Baldoni and almost everyone immediately sided with Blake? The tide has turned so hard since those text messages leaked, and Sigrid McCauley filed the California Civil Rights Department complaint. People saw how Blake and her team operated behind the scenes, the power plays, the name-dropping, the attempts to take control of a film that belonged to someone else. Baldoni's side has consistently denied Lively's allegations and accused her and Ryan Reynolds of using intimidation tactics against him. And as more evidence comes out, more people are finding his version of events credible. Social media has basically flipped entirely, with fans pointing out the difference between how Blake presents herself publicly and how she apparently behaves privately. The celebrity friend group that used to surround Blake seems to be getting smaller by the day. It used to be that she and Taylor were photographed together constantly, part of this larger squad that dominated pop culture for years. Now, Taylor is planning a wedding and reportedly not losing a minute of sleep over Blake's legal troubles. That shift didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen in a vacuum. Those text messages showed everyone exactly how Blake talked about Taylor behind closed doors, treating her name like a chess piece to move around the board whenever she needed to intimidate someone. That's not friendship, and people recognize it. So let's bring this all together, because there's a bigger story here than just two celebrities ignoring Blake Lively's phone calls. What we're watching in real time is the collapse of a carefully constructed public image. For years, Blake positioned herself as this fun, relatable girl's girl who happened to be best friends with the biggest pop star on the planet and married to one of Hollywood's most likable leading men. She had the perfect life, the perfect squad, the perfect brand, and now, piece by piece, that whole thing is falling apart because the way she treated people behind closed doors is finally becoming public. The $500 million lawsuit based on Colleen Hoover's best-selling novel adaptation has become so much bigger than just a movie dispute. It's about power dynamics in Hollywood, about how celebrity friendships really work behind the scenes, and about what happens when someone's true colors finally show. Taylor Swift checking out of this situation entirely is probably the smartest move she could make, and I think she knows it. Getting involved in Blake's legal fight would accomplish nothing good for Taylor and could potentially damage her brand right before the most important personal event of her life. That wedding is going to happen. It's going to be spectacular, and Taylor is clearly not going to let anyone else's drama overshadow it, but I do think it bothers her more than the public statements suggest. Finding out that someone you considered a close friend was essentially weaponizing your name to push people around has to hurt, even if you're Taylor Swift. Ben Affleck choosing to stay silent, honestly, might be the most mature thing he's done in years. And that's saying something for a guy who's had his own very public struggles. He recognized that engaging with Blake in any way would blow up the stability he's built with Jennifer Garner, and he chose his family over someone else's ego. That tells me he sees exactly what a lot of us are starting to see, that Blake Lively is someone who will pull anybody into her orbit if she thinks it benefits her, regardless of the consequences for them. Looking ahead, I genuinely don't think Blake's situation gets better before it gets worse. The trial hasn't even started yet, and already the court of public opinion has turned against her dramatically. Every new detail that comes out seems to make things messier for her side. Whether Taylor eventually gets called as a witness remains to be seen, though personally I doubt it. I think the legal teams got what they needed. From those text messages, and dragging Taylor into a courtroom would generate headlines, but probably not change the outcome of the case. What do you think about all of this? Do you believe Taylor really isn't bothered, or is she just playing it cool? And what about Ben? Do you think he made the right call by staying silent? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I genuinely want to hear where you all land on this one. If you're enjoying this kind of deep dive, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, because trust me, this story is far from over.